to as an American. America stands for justice, and that innocent people, the individual, in this case, a soccer coach in Clarksville, New York, his lawyer joins us. You're not going to believe what happened to this Nick. Is the nickname, I believe. Oral is his given name, like Oral Hershiser. Oral Hillary is the gentleman's name. His lawyer is Lisa Maroccion, and she joins us live from her law office. We're just on the phone, off the air, behind the scenes. It's really an incredible story. You, like me, you're going to have a hard time believing this happens in modern America. But in fact, it does. And it hits you like a ton of bricks because he seems like the nicest, most laid-back guy ever. Lisa Maroccion is joining us on the Ed Tyll Show live across America. Lisa, how are you today?
Good. How are you?
I'm upset because I'm an old law student from the 70s. And
oh, yeah?
I'm a justice pain in the ass kind of guy. I'm on the Democrats
one day. Side.
Good. Because, I'm on Democrats when they do what I want, and I'm with the Republicans when they do what I want.
So am I.
You know what I mean? So
Yes, absolutely.
Let's get right to it. You're a lawyer protecting someone from a system that it's unbelievable what the facts are. So you'll recite those first for us, and then you'll tell us what you're doing, because this can't be allowed, what's happening to him. So let's start from the beginning. He's a soccer coach in Clarksville, New York. What happens?
He was a soccer coach at Clarkson University up in Potsdam, New York. He's been a soccer coach for many years. He was dating a woman by the name of Candy Cyrus. They broke up, and a couple months after their breakup, her young son was murdered. Immediately following the murder, the investigation turned on Mr. Hillary as the prime suspect. And that is basically how the course of the investigation went. They had made their minds up that Nick Hillary was the person responsible for this, and that began the pursuit against Nick Hillary to charge him with this murder. He was charged last May, and he was indicted last May by the grand jury. That indictment was dismissed due to improprieties during the grand jury proceeding, and then he got reindicted this past winter.
Lisa, what kind of lawyer are you? Because it sounds like this calls for a criminal defense attorney, but that's not perfectly accurate. What purpose are you serving for him to protect him?
Well, at this point, my role in it from a legal perspective is after the first indictment, I had filed a notice of claim. In New York, prior to suing a municipality, you have to file a notice of claim. I had filed a notice of claim on his behalf for a malicious prosecution after the first indictment was dismissed. However, obviously, they secured a second indictment. So that's sort of where we are in that. He does have other counsel. In the federal rights lawsuit, he's represented by Manai Safari, and on the criminal side, he's represented by Pete Dumas and Ed Narrow. They're criminal defense attorneys in upstate New York.
All right, now you know why you and I are going to be fast friends on the air on these topics all the time. I'm so glad you're a guest here today. By the way, let me do this for people who are just meeting you for the first time. To follow along with us, is there a website where they can learn more about you? Is there a way they can read along while we're discussing this case? Because it's fascinating, the angle that you have in this incredible drama. So how can people follow along with you?
They can follow along with Nick's case. The best way for them to follow along is there's a website that was created by Nick's supporter. It's called truthfornickhillary.com. Hillary, Hillary, and basically that is just a compilation of all the different facts in the case. And these are facts, and that all the information on the website is public information. They're records of the court. It's not really opinion evidence. It's factual evidence that's presented on this website, so people could go on and kind of get a better understanding of what's happening in Nick's case. So the website is truthfornickhillary.com, and people could follow along there.
Very good. All right, so how do you get involved? You pick up the phone, and is Nick himself on the other side of the phone? Is that how you come into the case?
Well, no, basically Nick is actually a longtime friend of mine, and that's sort of how I've been involved in this case. He's a good friend of mine for many years now. So I know him personally and professionally. Right.
So is that just coincidence, or is it small town America? That's the way things are. A soccer coach and lawyer over here. I mean, how do you come to know him? By shopping?
I know Mr. Hillary through my husband. They played soccer together at St. Lawrence University.
Soccer,
so Nick's
perfect.
from upstate New York. I'm actually from Long Island, so we're a ways away from each other.
I gotcha. So there you go.
Yes.
So soccer brings him around. He's a neighborhood guy.
Yes.
So when you heard his side of it, you must have been stunned, even though you're a lawyer.
Oh, I was in disbelief. I'm still in disbelief. I'm still, not even as a lawyer, just as a layperson, you just don't want the justice system to work this way. And to watch it go down like this, you just feel almost sort of, I mean, I'm a lawyer, so I'm not helpless, so I can do something, but you sort of feel helpless in this situation because it really is, it's unbelievable. So, yeah, I was shocked. I was shocked when they actually, even though I saw it coming because I knew how aggressively they were pursuing him over the past, from the time that the boy was murdered till they got the indictment, you saw obviously what was happening, but you still kind of hope that it wouldn't.
Now, see, here's the thing, right? This is very interesting, I think, to a lot of listeners who are inundated with either fiction or fiction recreated on TV and in film,
right,
that shows a system that bears a stereotype.
Right,
you come away
right.
from TV thinking no one innocent is ever going to get screwed, like, in depth. I mean, for a moment, yes, but it could never get this far out of hand because I've seen CSI, I've seen Law and Order, I've read the paper. So go ahead, reveal for our listeners, Lisa Marcossia, this is such a benefit to people. How can the system fail and get this far afield with an innocent person that you know personally and professionally? This makes no sense at all, but it's way, way in it. This poor guy dragged out of his house, intimidated. It sounds like Nazi stormtroopers. How does it happen? Tell us how it happens.
Well, I think how it happens is basically once the system has said, they want to solve crimes, right? They want to put people in jail for the crime. They want to hold someone responsible. And a lot of times, even though you're supposed to look at the facts, look at the evidence, and then have that lead that to your perpetrator, a lot of times the opposite is done. They identify who the perpetrator is or who they believe it to be based upon race, based upon circumstance, who might be almost the easy victim to blame, right? And then they create all the evidence to have it go to that person. And, you see this happen a lot of times. I mean, it happened in the Central Park 5 case. So, this is how a lot of times the system works. So what happens is once they've identified the person who they want to be responsible, whether they actually believe it to be the person or not, but who they say this is the fall guy, okay, basically the investigation then is just focused on how to make him or her the fall guy, not so much how are we going to find the right person, the person who is responsible for this. And that's sort of what you see happening in Nick's case, is that the focus was on him from day one. And every time I think there was an impasse when they reached something where, okay, well, how do we explain this away? What could we use to sort of manipulate this evidence to show that he had to be responsible for it? So a perfect example is this, and I don't know if you were looking at the website, this limp that came out, right? The lead investigator testified, or put in his affidavit to get obtained search warrants, that Nick had a significant limp, right? Right after the murder, and so obviously this shows, right, that Nick injured himself during the murder. However, they have this video. And this is Mr. Hill was very lucky in this regard that this is available. But there is this video of him at the soccer game where they see this alleged limp, and you see him walking. It's on truthfornickhillary.com. You see him walking, and I mean he's walking perfectly well. He's actually walking better than the soccer players who are young men in their teens and early 20s. And you see that there was no limp. Now, if you don't have that video, you just have the statement from the police officer saying, "I saw this limp," and that's taken as truth. And basically, that's how it works. Is the evidence and the facts get manipulated to fit the mold of who they want the perpetrator to be.
And what does break this case? What is it that cracks this code of deception and the truth gets out? Is it him? Is it what you guys do on the malicious prosecution side? Is it a failing of the prosecution against him, a gaping hole in what they do? What is it that reveals it's obvious this guy didn't do it? Or are they still pressing him right now?
They're still pressing.
He's still under.
Well, I think. I'm sorry. Keep going.
No, you're right there. They're still pressing him, and why?
Well, I think here, Mr. Haley's situation is unique. I think there's a lot of aspects as to how his case is getting the exposure and getting sort of the clarity the clarity that he's getting here. I think one aspect, right, is that he commenced a civil rights action, and the benefit of that was that he had the opportunity, or his lawyer had the opportunity, to take the depositions of the police officers, the people responsible for the investigation. So they got a lot of background information on the case, and a lot of truth came out through the civil action that wouldn't be available otherwise if you had not done that. So basically, if the police officers testify for one thing in the civil case, it's going to be very difficult for now them to come into the criminal portion and say something totally different than they previously said. And so now they're sort of bound by the truthful statements they already made, and it's going to be harder for them to manipulate the evidence later on. Because at the time he commenced a civil action, the criminal, he was not charged with the crime yet. So I think that's one aspect. I think another aspect here, again, he has a lot of lawyers representing him. So I think anytime any person in this situation has legal counsel, it's always beneficial. And then the third aspect, I do think there's some missteps by the prosecution here. Like I said, her first indictment was dismissed for improprieties, and I think that I think she's had some missteps along the way. I think it's also important to point out that the prior DA, the DA who was in office at the time of the murder, was there for 2 years and never charged Nick. And the new DA came in, District Attorney Mary Rain, and she brought the charge a few months later.
And what do you attribute that to? Do you have a clear path that this is political? She campaigned on it. We've never gotten the killer of this poor child. What would have made a new DA come after a guy who's unlikely and has, resource? I mean, it really looks weird. What do you think this vendetta is? They just don't have anybody else?
Well, I think there's a couple of things. One, I do think it's political. She ran her whole campaign on basically getting justice for Garrett Phillips. She campaigned with the mother. She campaigned with Garrett Phillips' family. And I think that was, so I think it's political for her. I mean, she almost basically got elected on this idea that they're going to catch the murderer.
Now, what's the strength of that angle from your assessment? The strength of their conviction is what? There's no one else to blame. This guy had a bad temper, blah, blah. I mean, the killing is a suffocation, correct? A strangling?
Right.
Okay,
right.
So this has got to be a certain alpha dog. Puffy Pat over there could never strangle anybody. There's a lot of people in this world that could hate people and never do anything about it. So doesn't it have to fit him to some degree?
Well, that's the funny thing about that is that that's actually not the case at all. And if you ever meet Mr. Hillary, he's the most mild-mannered, respectful individual. He has no violent tendencies. He has no criminal history of any kind of violent act.
That's the way, That's the way he came off. That's exactly the way he came on. Not to interrupt you, but I'm just trying to go for the audience's sake. We did hear that. That's exactly what we heard on the air a while ago. So my question to you is, from the assessment side, is what do you think has got the family locked up on this as well? I could see cops or a system covering itself on an overreach and saying, no, this is what we said then, and we're going to try to back it up. But do you think the family really is convinced this is the guy in the face of all this contradiction?
Well, again, I don't really know. I don't know what the family's thinking. I feel that they've been told by the law enforcement up there and by the district attorney that this is the gentleman who's responsible, and maybe they're just holding on to that. They want some sort of justice for Garrett, because obviously it was a tragedy. On the flip side, though, it's very hard in the face of everything to believe that, because objectively, I mean, the DNA results, the fingerprints, it all came back and it was not a match for Nick. So, I mean, there's all this very objective evidence that shows that it couldn't have been him. So I don't know why they still may believe that Nick's responsible.
Lisa,
I think, you just want someone to blame for this.
I hear you.
Crime.
I hear you loud and clear. Lisa Maroccion is our guest, an attorney for Nick Hillary. Nick Hillary stands accused of a murder. He's an American, in my opinion, he's like the all-American soccer coach guy.
Absolutely.
That's who this guy is. When you watch his YouTubes there and you see him talk about getting rousted out of his house and being investigated, this doesn't match. It's what they call a disconnect or a non sequitur. So
let
me flip this question then. This is gonna obviously fall apart if he presses on it because it's of whole cloth, or beware, American people, these folks go to jail because the system is so imperfect. There could be a gap between what the system can get away with and what this guy's rights are, and he could wind up in jail for this. What do you want the public to know? Because I'm worried about that issue.
Yeah, no, it's a problem, and again, I think part of the problem is the way the system's set up. It basically criminal convictions or the criminal process is so secretive in the way the grand jury is conducted, in the way that discovery is handled, and really the scales of justice are so tipped in the favor of the prosecution that it's very hard for people to get a fair trial generally, and you see how someone can kind of get railroaded into a crime they didn't commit. So I would just like the public to know that, one, to inform themselves of Mr. Hillary's case and sort of see the flaws in our system, because this happened to Mr. Hillary, but we know that this has happened to others, and it will continue to happen unless there's some sort of real change here. And like I said, I think people, if they go onto the website, they can kind of peruse the facts themselves and see there's a nice timeline on the case and see how this has developed to basically put a fall guy for a murder that he didn't commit.
And that website is truthfornickhillary.com?
truthfornickhillary.com.
You have 2 points I want to cover real fast, and I know
Sure.
I'm keeping you too long, but thank you so much for your time. Lisa Marocciaon is our guest. She is a terrific attorney. You can hear that because she's a great advocate, but she's also doing a public service right now, and I'm going to help with that right now.
Okay.
I'm glad there is a law called malicious prosecution, okay? It's not allowed to maliciously prosecute. You have to really have a case. This can't just be a vendetta.
Right.
So since that's your role here, what is, in layman's terms, the threshold of when they're being zealous and when they're being malicious? What does the law say? Go ahead.
Well, basically, there has to. Well, one, the proceeding needs to end in the plaintiff's favor. So here, Nick would either need to, the indictment would need to be dismissed, or he would need to be acquitted of the crime. And basically, in sum and substance, what the prosecutor had to have malice intent when they brought the charge. So it's supposed to obviously protect a prosecutor from just when they simply make a mistake, right? Versus when they possibly manipulate the evidence or mold the investigation, or try to go after someone when they have knowledge or should have knowledge, right, that this is not the person responsible. So again, there's this malice intent that the prosecution has to have. And it's definitely a difficult burden, but I feel that here, I mean, just based upon what's gone on in this case, I do feel like it is present and very obvious.
Well, do you have to catch him? In other words, for the public to know, does the prosecutor, to be found malicious, it has to be that on his own he's being malicious, right? In other words, if he adds the malice, if the facts get him angry and he just prosecutes real harshly, that's not malice. Malice is, I'm not even sure the guy did it, but I'm going to go after him like I know he did it. You know what I mean? I'm trying to understand the malice part.
No. I mean, just being a zealous prosecutor, fighting hard to get a conviction on a case where you think it's warranted, or
that's
you think
fine.
the way that the facts, I mean, right, a district attorney is supposed to look at the case, look at the investigation, and say, all right, we believe this person did it, we're gonna bring these charges, or no, there's either not enough evidence to show, or the evidence, like in Nick's case, basically exonerates him, right? Because Nick has, the DNA doesn't match. He has two alibi witnesses. There's no witnesses seeing him at the crime scene. So actually, most of this evidence would actually exonerate an individual from prosecution, but here it did the opposite. So, that's a sort of case where if you're looking at evidence that would actually tend to show that the person did not commit the crime, and yet you bring the charges anyway for your own, let's say here, I'm saying for own benefit, for the benefit of the Potsdam police force.
Right.
Then that shows sort of the malice intent.
There you go. Oh, now I got you. And isn't there also, this is an old memory of mine, but there is something about being an officer of the court where if something is exculpatory to the other side, aren't you bound to tell the court about it because of the search for truth?
Right. Well, see, that's sort of the tough part of the criminal justice system is that, yes, you are. It's called Brady material. You're supposed to turn over to the defense anything that would tend to exculpate the accused. But the way that it doesn't always work as perfectly as it's designed to, because again, who's controlling the information? The prosecution. So are they going to willingly and honestly turn over everything that they would deem would actually show that this person didn't do it? Probably not. And here in the criminal action, several Brady motions were filed by the defense to actually force the district attorney here to get the information. And if you look at the public filings, there was an issue with her actually turning over the information. She was being very reluctant in turning it over. So,
Wow.
I don't think that always, even though that's how it's supposed to happen in theory, I don't think that's how it happens in real life.
Lisa, I watched you on one of those news at 5 o'clock shows on the anchor desk, okay? And I saw that gal trying to wrap her mind around what the subject was, and you were so nice to her. You were so good with her. Now, I went the other way on you. I have all this detailed stuff, and you're great with me. So I want you to know, you put a big gold star up there in the public perception of lawyers. Everybody thinks the lawyers mean trouble. You don't mean trouble. You are not trouble.
We're supposed to be the keepers of justice, right?
You are the keeper of justice.
And I really take that role very seriously. And, this again, Mr. Hillary is a personal friend of mine, but, you see all these stories where this happens to people. And, at the end of the day, having someone waste their life in jail is just at the hands of the system is a tragedy. And I just feel like I can't let that happen. I have to fight the best fight I can.
It is. It's so incredibly important what you're doing here for all the right reasons. You do have a personal understanding, so that really does give you a dimension that a lot of folks in the system would not understand. But the system itself has to really right itself when it's in the middle of this. And you pointed out, we'll talk about this maybe next time, and I'll use it for a topic. You unleashed something here. The politics of that DA office certainly visited this man with a pounding at the door of the authorities. That's really not America. It's not supposed to work that way. What a pleasure.
Absolutely.
Thank you for visiting today.
Thank you so much for having me.
I can't wait till you come back on the show on another important case, because anything you're into that's newsworthy, I'm interested in, and so are our listeners across the country. Thanks very much for today.
Great. Thank you so much.
You bet. Lisa Maroccion, what a great attorney for the right reasons on the Ed Tyll Show. This innocent man caught in the system.